Hey guys, welcome back to Margot Watches Movies. My name is Jake Margot. Tonight we're reviewing episode 3 of Pluribus and coming off a fascinating and highly intriguing first two episodes. How does episode 3 titled Grenade fare in comparison? Well, right off the bat, I have to say this episode, much like the first two episodes, does a great job of layering the intrigue, answering a few questions I wasn't expected to be answered so soon, but creating more questions and layering in our lead character, Carol, providing some great insights, some remarkable sets. The set design, especially in that little cold open before this title card behind me, was just one of the most original and unique TV sets I think I've ever seen. And if we're going to be getting more and more of that on a week-to-week basis, especially where after a little bit of research, it appears this has a roughly weekly budget of $15 million per episode, with Vince Gilligan being who he is. I just can't wait to see what more visual splendor we are gifted with as this show develops. Now, overall, the episode as a whole was strong. I do think that there will be better episodes, but I'm still very high on that, and I want to make that clear. I think the floor of this show is the attic above the ceiling for almost every show on TV, and that's par for the course with a Vince Gilligan production. The guy is the Chris Nolan or the Denis Villeneuve of TV. He never misses. And for me, I have to say there's two factors about this that I'm both intrigued by and maybe worried as far as the character, the main character. And it's not bothering me yet. But I did have a friend texting me about this, and I'm curious to know what you guys think, if you more share his sentiment or mine, that he was almost turned off from this episode due to the complete, should we say, cynicism, bitterness of Carol. And while it's understandable in this new dichotomy of planet Earth, it's an understandable crash out to be temperamental and angry and wanting to lash out at everything as the whole status quo of the world has changed in a flash. But as the opener of the episode, showcasing this jaw-dropping set in a seasonal hotel made of ice in Norway under the Arctic lights, which, by the way, on a little side note here, listening to the podcast, that was a real set they created. Obviously, they didn't film it at an actual hotel, but they flew in plastic and was it cardboard or styrofoam to make the set. They actually had someone carve the plastic and styrofoam in the background to create that aesthetic, and it was just an unbelievable, highly unique TV set. It deserves all the praise. But we see in this flashback, even then, and they use that running clock, which kind of serves, they did it in the first two episodes, kind of like it's not the same, but kind of within the realm of the show, the BC AD parable of this running clock going forward and backwards. When we see it ticking down, we know we're in a flashback. When it's moving forward, we know we're in present day. But we see Carol in this remarkable, once-in-a-lifetime type of hotel, fresh off the heels of a release of her book, with, I'm not quite sold yet 100%, but it appears that her and Helen were maybe more than just manager and friend. Like, I think they were romantically involved, and whether they loved each other romantically or platonically, they loved each other. And here she is with the most special person in her life at this once-in-a-lifetime hotel, and nothing seems to please her. She's cold, and no pun intended there, as they're in a hotel made of ice, but she's so cold and removed from it. And when Helen tells her the news she made the top 20, she doesn't even seem pleased at that. Well, was I closer to 20 or closer to 11? Everything with her is met with this side of cynicism, and I don't think it's reaching Skylar White levels. It's too early, and I empathize with her plight. My friend, on the other hand, did. So I'm just curious to know, are you guys finding that a problem at all? Is she grating on you? I do think if they continue her in this exact trajectory or this exact form that she's in for an entire season, it might grate a little bit. We might need to have a little bit more POV changes. But I sense that they're going to use this new world to find a way to lower her defenses and her walls and warm her up a little bit. But that's just my 2 cents. So, and that's a big study all throughout the episode for me. And Vince, I think, realizes this. This is not a accidental choice. This is not a poor choice of Rhea Seehorn. This is what the script demands. So I think the destination will be worth it. But he also uses this episode as a backdrop to kind of study this about Carol. What made her that way? And why is someone who, in much like most Vince Gilligan cold opens, Breaking Bad was famous for this, where a seemingly unrelated scene will tie in some form, whether it be to the plot or a hard-hitting line of dialogue. In this episode, it was hard-hitting dialogue, to where she was in this moment with the woman she loved. She was unable to enjoy it even remotely. And now that everything for her has changed, Vince Gilligan uses this as a way to study that, let her realize what she had and what she took for granted. Will it create some change for her? That remains to be seen. And after the cold open, we pick up right on the plane, leaving off from the end of the episode where she jumped on the tarmac to bring Raban back to her plane. And this is where some questions are answered yet again regarding the non-English speaking survivors, what we call them, unique people. And we get all the way down the list of Raban explaining all these different people to the man, I believe in Paraguay, maybe the country's wrong there, who has seemingly isolated himself and does not want to be contacted. And Carol even tries calling him. And in a pretty funny moment, like he, cusses her out in Spanish, and she calls back just to cuss him out in Spanish. He doesn't seem to be wanting to be bothered at all. And I would actually be really interested to see his point of view in a future episode. I hope we get that, because I think there's some real intrigue there. Great chance to showcase this big gaudy budget and take us somewhere else. So I hope in a future episode we get to see that. But from there is Carol really realizing the mechanisms and how this world works, and getting some really great set pieces, one actionless and one with a little bit of zest and getting the blood flowing. But where Carol is trying to just be depressed and drunk on her couch watching reruns of Golden Girls, she gets food delivered. She realizes she needs to go to the grocery store, so she goes to a completely empty Sprouts. And yet another amazing set. Did they really empty out all of Sprouts for this shot? I mean, it looked incredible. And Carol calls, says, what the heck? And they bring in 4 18-wheelers. And this is a great showcase to, again, see some of the benefits a world like this could have, because there is such this uniformed synergy. There's everything with them is symmetrical and synchronized. And it's like this perfect workforce. They've almost become like ants in a way, and everything is so efficient. And they restocked this store, I think, with the fast forward countdown in a matter of 90 minutes. There's just this swath of extras coming in. It was a really, really cool set piece for having no action. And Carol basically gets her own Sprouts, gets to shop, returns home, has a phone call from Raban, sarcastically says, well, why don't you bring me a grenade to celebrate the greatest week in human history? And she shows up with a hand grenade. Carol invites her in to drink over this. And as she has a few shots of her vodka, she pulls the pin on the grenade. She goes, well, you wouldn't have given me a live one. And Raban goes, please allow us, grabs the grenade, throws it out the window, and an explosion happens. She catches shrapnel, Raban does. And Carol has this light bulb epiphany moment, realizing, holy cow, will they literally give me whatever I want? After, of course, you see this real concern. And this is where, I think there's some great characterization here from Vince Gilligan, to my earlier point, where, yes, she has all of these walls and defenses up, but Rhea Seehorn is such a great performer. She does allow the concern to bleed out of her that you see. She's clearly um, growing, if not affection, some type of likening to Raban, enjoying the companionship in a way, whether it's just because there's no other options or there's something about her that intrigues her. You can definitely see one little piece at a time being chipped away from the walls she's put up around herself. So as she waits in the hospital, and again, some great bit of acting from Rhea Seehorn to really drive that point home with fidgeting hands and fingers, nervous, tapping her feet, really selling that she is actually concerned for Raban. Another member of the hive mind, comes in a DHL outfit, and this was a really great performance from just a random actor I've never seen in anything else, where you get this great philosophical talk between him and Carol about what won't you tell me no? She goes, well, you brought me a live hand grenade. Would you bring me another one? Yeah, we would. Would you bring me a bazooka and a rocket launcher? Yeah, we would. A tank? And then she drops the hammer and goes, would you bring me a nuclear bomb? And as someone in the comments pointed out last week with the French guy having the nuclear football, this is a really interesting point, especially with the constant repetition of your life is your own. If there's one person out of these survivors, and maybe there's a few more they still haven't discovered in remote, isolated parts, if there is somebody with bad intentions that wants to go off the rocker and have power hungry or moments of just wanting to see destruction, they are not going to tell them no. Could it be Carol? I'd lean to no, but this is a Vince Gilligan show. He's pretty famous for zigging when you think they're going to zag. So I don't know. I don't think Carol is going to be the one. Maybe it's this unexplained, isolated guy in Uruguay or Paraguay, wherever he is. But it's an interesting question. These people will literally, you have the world at your fingertips with these people. They will provide anything to keep them happy. Even if it leads to destruction, they just won't partake in it. And you see the gears start turning in Carol's mind. So I think that's where episode 4 is really going to focus on, is her pushing the boundaries of this world and seeing what she can get away with. And I think that'll be highly entertaining. That's my prediction for next week. We'll see. I could be wrong. But, all in all, I think this is an 8 out of 10 episode. And this is my grading of this episode. I want to be clear. It's going to be a lot stricter than it would be for a normal episode. The true 10s out of 10s in a Vince Gilligan show. Ozymandias, Half Measures, a few of the X-File episodes, a few of the Better Call Saul episodes. These are all-time great television episodes, not just great episodes within the show. All-time great. Top 100 ever, top 50 ever, top 20 ever, factoring in Ozymandias and Half Measure for me. And so I have to grade, but 8 out of 10 to me seems like the floor for this show. So could get a lot of 8 out of 10s. It's going to be tough to get a 10 out of 10. It's going to have to be mind-blowing, but that's where we are. And I'd love to hear what your guys' thoughts are on the episode. Again, to the point I made with me texting a buddy who's really turned off calling her Skylar White. What are your thoughts on that? And I'd love to hear some theories about where you guys think the show's going. So that's all for me tonight. This is Jake Margo with Margo Watches Movies. Leave me a like. Give me a subscribe if you enjoy the review. You want to keep seeing future episodes. Ring that bell so you get all the latest updates. But that'll do it for tonight, guys. So as always, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.